morning, students. Yesterday we discussed telephone conversation by Walsoinka, and today we will discuss Harlem by Langston Hughes. Now this is again by he's of course an American poet, but then he talks about African American poet. Then he talks about Harlem. You know, Harlem is basically a residential area in New York. Okay, and why he has written a poem through the use of this particular residential area, what Hughes is trying to tell you, and various aspects of African American life that he is mentioning here. Let us try to find out what the poem is about. Okay, so Harlem. Harlem is a residential area of New York City, USA, a political and cultural focus for African Americans. Remember, the Center for Research in Black Culture is located here next to County Cullen Library, an historic meeting place for writers since the 1920s. The Harlem Renaissance was a period of creativity, particularly in literature. Renaissance हम किसको बोलते हैं? New awakening, new learning. So Harlem Renaissance, it was related to creative literature by the African Americans. Like all great writers and poets of the community, Hughes imbibed a sense of indelible racial pride का ध्यान रखें, ठीक है? And how he developed this racial pride was because of his upbringing in his grandmother's household with the tradition of oral storytelling. Oral tradition क्या होता है? Where the culture is orally transferred from generation to generation. Grandmothers, grandma, nani, dadi, they tell you stories, and those stories relate to your culture. That is what happened with the Africans also, the black people. In their community, the culture was passed from one generation to the another generation, to the next generation, through what we call the oral tradition. Now, by making use of this racial pride in the poem, what is Hughes trying to tell us? Let us find it out first. It's a very small poem, okay, but with a big meaning, a huge interpretation lies in here. He says, what happens to a dream deferred? Dream, okay? Deferred. Deferred is postponed. Does it dry up? Now, before I read further, I have written here what the dream is about. The dream is the American dream, which related to equality, which related to prosperity, which related to success, which related to achievements seen and realized by the Americans, but they were denied to the Africans. That is why Hughes says deferred. Deferred means postponed. So the Black Americans or the African Americans have been denied this American dream. Now, because they have been denied this, it is like a wound, and that wound is turning bad, he says. And he says, if that ultimately, if that wound is outrightly turns bad, then you have no option but to cut it out and bring out the the yellow pus that is inside that. Okay, and now this is a metaphor. Through the use of the sword, through the use of various aspects, you know, he has tried to tell you, or he is trying to tell you, what will happen if this dream is deferred. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up? Like a raisin in the sun. किशमिश की तरह सूख रहा है वो. It is drying in the sun because the politicians, the Americans, the white people, they are not paying any heed to the African Americans. Or fester like a sore. Disease, you know, sore. It worsens like a disease. And then run. एक घाव, एक चोट, you know, जिसमें पस पड़ जाती है, and then it starts leaking the sore. Does it stink like a rotten meat? देखिए पहले क्या बात करी उसने? Raisins की. Where should I write? Right here. Drying. And then he talks of a sore that is worsening. And then he talks of meat, which is rotting. Or crust and rotting as well as stinking. Thus, does it stink like rotten meat? Stink? Foul smell, bad smell. Or crest, that is the outer layer, and sugar over, that is the sweetness, like a syrupy sweet, that is a sweet syrup. May it just sags, may it just hangs down like a heavy load, you know, when the body sags, it becomes heavy, or anything for that matter in which there is too much of load. Now यहाँ पे किस चीज़ का load है? Of a dream that is postponed, of a dream that is being delayed from being realized. So all this is happening, and he's saying that the dream, American dream, which cannot be realized by the African Americans, is becoming a sore. And he says, if the aspirations of the black people are not realized, it may lead to a bloody revolution in the country. And through these metaphors, through these things that are rotting in the sun, that are drying in the sun, and the sore that is worsening, and the meat that is stinking, he says that if this keeps going on, nothing is left but only a revolution will take place, which will destroy everything, which will explode everything. So this is what Harlem is about. It will become more clear to you when I read about the poem. The images, you know, these are the images which are used. The images in Harlem are sensory. Senses, you know, they apply to your senses, they affect your senses. They are domestic, they are earthy, like the blues images. The stress is on deterioration. देखिए, drying, rotting, festering, soaring, on loss of essential natural quality. तो इन चीज़ों की जो essential natural quality है, एक मैंने मिस कर दिया, that is the sweet syrup. Sweet syrup की crust की बात करी है. So they have what? They have lost their natural quality, and they all are rotting, scorching and drying. The raisin has fell from fresh juicy grape to a dehydrated but still edible raisin to a sun-baked and inedible dead bone of itself. Right? The Afro-American is not unlike the raisin, for he is in a sense a desiccated trunk of his original African self, right? Their roots, their identity as black has not been given proper weightage, right, by the Americans, by the whites. used and abundant in American wilderness with the stipulation that he rot and disappear. तो वो उनको raisins की तरह करना चाहते हैं. Let them rot and let them dry and let them become like a dead bone. Like the raisins lying neglected in the sun, the black man is treated like a thing of no consequence, of no use. But the raisin refuses the fate assigned to it. It metamorphoses, changes instead into a malignant living soul that will not heal or disappear. A soul which is never going to heal. That is why what will happen? A revolution will take place, he says. The metaphor is rather long drawn out, but it is symptomatic of a serious disorder. Its stink is like the stink of rotten meat sold to black folks in so many ghetto groceries. So through this image, what is he trying to tell you? That rotten and stinking meat is sold to the black Americans. Meat no longer suitable for human use. And while syrupy sweet is not central to the diet, it is still found a rounding off desert for the black people. But that final pleasure turns out to be a pain. When he says in the end, what will happen if that bursts? What will happen? The elements of the deferred dream are raisins, sour, meat and candies. Little things of no great consequence in themselves. They are small things having no consequence, having lost their essential natural quality. But their unrelieved accretion packs together considerable pressure. That is why revolution. Their combined weight is too much to carry. The longer it is carried, the heavier it will get. So jitna zyada white people are going to torture the black people, the more strength they will gain to fight against them, to achieve this American dream for themselves. And if it is dropped, it might explode from all its strange, tortured, compressed energies. In short, dream deferred can be a terrifying thing. Its greatest threat is its unpredictability. So basically, what is happening? What is Hughes trying to tell you? That when you deny certain things, or let me say certain most important things, most important things relating to identity, okay, when that is denied to a person, and when his racial pride is of great significance to him, he does not bother about anything. He is not left without any option when he is not allowed to realize a dream, okay? And when his dream is postponed, when it is deferred, when it is delayed, he has no option but to go for a revolution. And this revolution initially started where? It started in Harlem, where people started writing about the black people, bringing their stories to the world, fighting for their existence. And we have examples like the ex-president Barack Obama, his wife, and Michelle Obama, and then the latest example, the vice president, Kamala Harris, the best example that you can see as far as the blacks. She is not black, but of course she has an Indian descent, her roots are Indian, but then these people have really chalked out a place for themselves in the American dream, in what should I say, in the a place which outrightly belongs to the white people. Okay, so these are works which are written quite late, 1950, 1951-59. Twice it was second edition आया होगा 59 में. So that was the time when Africans were really facing atrocities at the hands of the Americans. They were not given that position, that identity of being humans. Okay, here also he's giving you an example of rotten meat being sold to these people, candies that are not even chewable being sold to these people. I have myself worked on an African American writer, Toni Morrison, and there is a very small example which comes to my mind when I read this. There is her novel, The Bluest Eye. If you happen to read it, please go for it. And what that girl over there is saying, so you know what she's taught, that all those small children who are white, you know, they are like dolls, and all those small little girls who are black, they are like dandelions. Dandelions, weeds जिसको हम बोलते हैं, weeds, जंगली घास, बेकार का घास जिसको उखाड़ के फेंक दिया जाता है. So this is just one example that I'm quoting. There are several examples of exploitation of the blacks at the hands of the Americans. Here it is something that relates to economy. Here it is something that relates to the dream of every black American. Okay, I hope it is clear to you. Any queries, you are most welcome. Go through it once. Generally you get comprehension question definitely for sure from this, because deferred dream के ऊपर ही आता है. It's a small, just I think 7-8 lines that are there, but having a huge meaning, right? So that's all. Thank you so much. Take care.